So this right here is the NP200 we're working with today, full 2K paint job, and honestly, this thing turned out clean. Straight lines, smooth finish, the kind of respray that makes people stop and ask who did it. But here's the thing, getting a finish this clean isn't about having the most expensive gun or the priciest paint on the shelf. There's one mistake, and it's probably the most common one out there, that causes orange peel on almost every single DIY clear coat job, and honestly, a good number of pro jobs too. It's not about talent, it's not about your setup, it's literally one thing people get wrong over and over again without even realizing it. So in this video, I'm going to break down exactly what that mistake is, why it happens, and exactly how you need to spray your clear coat to avoid it completely and get a finish that looks like this. Now here's something most people don't realize about painting, and it's not the stuff you see in your typical tutorial. Everybody wants to talk about gun settings and reducer ratios, but nobody talks about the actual thinking behind why professionals get it right every single time. See, painting isn't just a skill you pick up from watching a few videos, it's a whole different way of looking at a panel before you even pick up the gun. The guys who are really good at this, they're not guessing, they're not hoping it turns out, they know exactly what's going to happen before they even pull the trigger. And that's exactly what I break down inside the Fellows course. The stuff that took years to figure out on my own, condensed down so you don't have to learn it the hard way like I did. This isn't about making you memorize steps. It's about teaching you to actually understand paint. And once you get that, orange peel, runs, all of it, it just stops happening. So stick around, you don't want to miss this. Another thing people skip, cleaning your gun properly. And I don't mean just rinsing it out, I mean actually breaking it down and cleaning it from the inside. Because when you don't clean it properly, you get buildup sitting inside that nozzle and those little passages. And when that happens, the gun can't atomize the paint properly anymore, meaning it's not breaking down into that fine mist it's supposed to. That right there is a straight up recipe for orange peel. Right now, this is the first pass of clear coat going down, and this is actually the exact moment where most people's orange peel problem gets decided, even though they won't see it for another few minutes. See, everybody's so focused on the second and third coat, thinking that's where the finish gets built, but the truth is this first pass is setting the temperature and the texture of everything that goes on top of it. What most people don't understand is that clear coat doesn't level out because of how you spray it. It levels out because of how it's allowed to flow before it starts flashing off. And that's controlled way more by what's happening on the panel right now than anything you do later. If this first coat goes down too dry, too fast, or too thin, you've already locked in texture that no amount of good technique afterward is going to fix. That's the part nobody explains. They just tell you to spray a light first coat and move on. But they never tell you why it actually matters. This pass isn't about coverage. It's about setting up the surface so the clear actually has room to level itself out instead of fighting to catch up on coat 2 and 3. So watch closely here, because what's happening on the panel right now determines whether this whole job turns out glass smooth or whether you're going to be looking at texture later and wondering where it went wrong. Now watch the pattern here, because this is where a lot of people mess up without even realizing it. Every pass needs to overlap the one before it, roughly halfway, and that overlap is what keeps the coat even across the whole panel instead of leaving thin strips that dry differently to the rest. Notice how the gun stays moving the whole time. It never stops over one spot, because the second it does, that's extra clear sitting in one place and everywhere else is starving for it. That's actually a huge part of where texture problems start. Not the ratio, not the gun settings, just inconsistent movement across the panel. Keep the distance the same the whole way through too, because the second your arm starts dropping or pulling back, the pattern changes and so does how that clear lands on the surface. This whole pass right here is just about staying consistent, same speed, same distance, same overlap, start to finish. So right now, we're just letting this first coat flash off. And this part right here is where most people get impatient. They see the panel looking dry on the surface and they figure it's ready, but what's happening on top isn't the same as what's happening underneath. The solvent's still working its way out of that film, and you can't rush that by blowing on it or standing there willing it to happen faster. This is just time you have to give it. And honestly, this is the part that separates a good finish from a bad one, more than people realize, because everything we just sprayed needs this window to actually settle before it can take another coat properly. So we're not doing anything right now. We're just letting the chemistry do its thing before we go back in. Don't worry about that orange peel. At this stage, it's completely normal. That's exactly how the first coat should look. All right, second coat's going down now, and this is where you actually start seeing the payoff from everything that happened before. Because that first coat already flashed off properly, the second pass has got something to actually bond into, instead of just sitting on top fighting for space. Watch how it's laying down different to the first one already. It's grabbing a lot smoother because the surface underneath is ready for it now. This is also the coat that starts building your actual film thickness. That's what gives you the depth once this thing is polished out later. Same rules apply here though, keeping that steady overlap, keeping the gun moving, not babying any one section longer than the rest. A lot of people think the second coat is where you can relax a bit because the hard part's over, but honestly, this coat still needs just as much attention as the first one. One inconsistent pass here and you're still looking at problems down the line, even after doing everything right the first time around. Second coat's down, and now we're back to waiting again. Same deal as before. The surface might look ready before it actually is, but this flash time matters just as much this time around, maybe even more, because now you've got 2 layers of solvent working their way out instead of one. This is also usually the point where people start rushing because they're 2 coats in and just want to get to the finish line. But this window right here is exactly what determines whether that second coat actually locks in properly or ends up trapping something underneath it that shows up later as a problem you can't fix without stripping it back. So we're just giving it the time it needs, no shortcuts, letting it flash off completely before we even think about moving on.